Hey guys, it's Mike at westendmotorsports.com here with another podcast. We got episode 2 coming at you, and I wanted to cover something that we deal with pretty much all the time that we thought could be kind of helpful to you when you're buying aftermarket parts for your motorcycle. And this video is titled 5 Ways to F Up Buying Exhaust Pipes for Your Bike. Unfortunately, it is something that we see happen constantly. And, a lot of times guys buy 1, 2, 3. I've had guys buy 4 sets of pipes, usually not because they're using our expertise or trying to check in and get our advice, but usually because they're doing these other 5 things almost all the time. And maybe they're doing all 5 things, or maybe they're just doing 1 or 2 of them. And so I thought that I would make a list here for you, basically give you 5 things not to do. And then also on top of that, I have sort of 5 things that I try to get people to consider when they're deciding what is the right pipe for them and for their application, because it's different every time. If it was the same, we'd only have one exhaust manufacturer, right? But we've got tons of different brands out there that all do a really good job and all make money. And so, I have sort of the way I describe to people to try to figure out what it is and to value to put the right value into what trait about the exhaust that would work for you specifically. And so, we'll go ahead and we'll get right into this. And then we've got a question for you that we're going to update to our Twitter poll, because we're going to get working on customizing our demo bike with you guys. And so I'll get to that at the end of the video. So number 5, just buy a familiar name. This happens when you might be new to buying exhaust for your bike. Maybe you're on your second or third bike and your last bike had a certain brand, or you see a certain brand a lot. And so you sort of default to brand familiarity. And that's usually not going to lead you down a terrible path. Like if you go with one of the more popular brands, just on name alone, odds are you're going to get a good quality product. It just might not be the right pipe for what you want, and so we see that quite a bit where a lot of times the big brands don't make the most like the biggest statement exhaust. Like their pipes might not be the most radical design, or they might or custom design, or the loudest pipes, and so they kind of want the middle of the road, most attractive to the most people, and that's fine. That doesn't mean that a lot of people that are buying their pipes don't like them. But what it does mean is that not everybody that's buying their pipes is going to like them, because they didn't buy them based on what they wanted. They bought them based on the fact that they just knew this brand and that was established already. And that kind of ties into with don't just buy what you had on your last bike, right? So if you go from a Softail with a twin cam and now you've upgraded to a Road Glide, and you had a certain pipe on that last bike, well, they're going to sound totally different because they're totally different types of exhaust systems and different engines. If you're going from a Sportster to a big twin, the same thing is true. Older Sportsters especially. I guess the newer Sportster models too, because they're totally different motors as well. So, you have to remember that there's differences between these bikes. Now, if you're going from a 17 M8 to a 23 M8, there's not going to be that much of a difference, and so that might not factor in there, but it could factor in elsewhere. So just something to keep in mind. Number 4, just buy what looks cool. So, we've all done this. You can do this with just about anything, right? You can go out and buy a car that looks cool, and then it's completely impractical and totally useless. And so, that's fine if it's your extra vehicle, and that's okay. But like if you need a daily driver and you have to get to work and you're a homeowner and you need to go buy, 2x4s on occasion, having a whole set of cars that look really cool are probably not going to do the job for you. And the same thing is true when you're buying exhaust, especially more so with full systems. Okay. Most slip-ons kind of look the same. I'm not saying that there's no differences, but the differences are sort of marginal and they're not huge. And so, where you get into that is with full systems. There's a lot of full systems that's where you really start to get that variation in appearance, and you'll see some exhausts, like some short side dump 2-into-1s. I remember Python had a Python Razor 2-into-1 that was this really sort of custom looking for baggers, where you would put stretch bags, the big stretch bags on, and you couldn't put a dual exhaust on any longer. And so they made this short side dump 2-in-1 that exited in front of the bags, and they looked awesome. And those things sounded like, I mean, I couldn't even describe it. They were a 10 out of 10 on volume, and it wasn't the cleanest, smoothest sound. They were just like all over the place. And they also performed terrible when we did our dyno tests and stuff. So, that's another factor. A lot of these pipes that look really cool might not sound great. They might not perform great. And they might be really expensive. And so you can spend a lot of money, poorly, really fast by just buying pipes for looks. And then that brings us into the next thing, which is to buy on price alone. So that's number 3. It's just buying based on price. Price should always be a factor. Okay, right? I'm not saying just spend all the money in the world and buy the most expensive set of slip-ons out there, spend $1,000 on mufflers and that's the end of it, or whatever it might be, or buy a $2,000 exhaust system with the dummy pipes and everything else. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm saying is, don't just buy the cheapest pipe out there because you need to put a pipe on the bike. Because even if that pipe is $300 and you bought it off of, say, Amazon, if it sounds like trash and it's poor quality, which it most certainly is, and we're talking about specific brands here without actually naming them, but if it is, a really cheap pipe and it's really poor quality and it's not going to sound good, guess what? You're taking that $300 and you're throwing it out. So instead of spending $200 or $300 more on the right pipe, or even more than that, depending on what you pick, right? You just took $300 and you lit it on fire, because now you've got a set of pipes that you can't return, that are completely useless, that sound like trash, and now you're going to buy the other pipe anyway. So that's kind of what we see a lot of times. I can't tell you how many calls I've answered from guys who are saying they have this certain brand. You're like, well, I just bought it because it was the cheapest pipe I could put on the bike quick. And it's like, okay, well, that's fine. But, you could have just spent a little bit more, or waited and spent a little bit more, waited till you had the money and then spent a little bit more and not have wasted $300, because selling those pipes is, you might get $50, $100 if you're lucky. Nobody really wants them. They just get them because they're cheap. And, which brings us to number 2, and that is buy what you can get today. So, we're here, this is February 27th, and we're leading up to Daytona, and we've got all kinds of people calling us and saying, hey, what do you have in stock? I need pipes for Daytona. And that's fine if you want to do that, but that's also a really good way to buy the wrong pipe, because just because something's in stock and on the shelf somewhere doesn't mean that that's the exhaust that you want for your bike. Now there's a lot of good pipes that'll ship right away, that are on hand, and we do our best to inventory the most popular stuff, but that still doesn't mean that those popular pipes are the right pipe for you. And we see that the most definitely at rally time and the lead ups to the rally, and guys are like, well, I really want this exhaust. And I'll tell them, it's back ordered, or it's a made to order pipe. Like some of the brands that we carry, they can take 2 to 3 weeks for you to get your pipe. And that's the way they are at all times. It's just, you have to get in line and wait. They're made to order. And they'll say, as a matter of fact, I had this conversation with a guy yesterday. And he's like, well, I'm really trying to get to Daytona, so what do you have in stock? And it's like, well, did you want that exhaust for a specific reason? Yeah. I thought my buddy has one on his bike. It's an identical bike. It sounds great. I really like it, but I'm leaving for Daytona and I need a pipe by the end of the week. And it's like, well, that's fine. I mean, I can sell you a pipe. It doesn't matter to me. I'm happy to sell you 2 sets of pipes if you want to, but I really try not to do that, So I went through it with him and I said, we've got all these pipes. These are all available. And I think there was a pipe that was kind of similar to what he wanted, but still not the same thing. And we always try to clear that up for people and just make it so that you understand, like, you're not buying what you wanted here, and don't blame us if you don't like it, because, in my experience, I think you should buy the pipe that you want. If you have something that you're familiar with that sounds good, I think that's a really good place to start. And it's a lot harder for you to make a mistake when you know what you're getting into. So don't just buy a pipe that you can get now if it's not the pipe you really want. Plan ahead a little bit. This is an exhaust that you're hopefully going to keep on your bike for as long as you own it, unless you totally change directions, like if you buy slip-ons now and then you decide to go with a 2-in-1 later. But short of that, if you buy the right pipe, you can have it on for the entirety of your ownership of the motorcycle. So just take a little bit of extra time, do a little bit of research there, and don't just buy what you can get at the moment. Okay. And then number one, this is 100% the biggest mistake. And this is kind of a two-parter that people make, but just buy the pipes that your buddies say is the best, right? Or I should title this one, number one, listen to your buddies, because 100% that is absolutely the wrong way to buy the right pipe. It's the right way to buy the wrong pipe for sure. And this also applies to buy the pipe that your dealer or your parts guy recommends for you to buy. Now, this is true not just of dealerships, but this is also true of a lot of our sort of e-commerce competitors. This is true of your buddies. Your buddy, let's say, was sold a particular pipe. Maybe he was sold that particular pipe because he talked to some guy on the phone and that guy said, this is the best pipe. You're going to love this pipe. It performs the best. Everybody's buying it, and he buys it. Now, he bought it. He spent the money on it. And whether or not he likes that exhaust, he's going to convince himself that he likes it, at least when he tells you. He may not like it. He may know he doesn't like it. But when he talks to other people, he's going to tell you this is the best pipe. And that doesn't mean that everybody who's recommending their exhaust doesn't like it. I'm just saying if they bought the wrong exhaust, you're not going to know. And they're going to tell you, and they're going to bring you down with them. Okay. And so this is all part of those sort of previous four things factor into this, because you're just listening to what somebody else recommends. And a lot of times a dealer will recommend a pipe that they have extra inventory of. Maybe they've got too many. And so they want to blow out their inventory. And so they'll tell you this pipe is the best. It performs best. I hear this all the time. And we've got objective dyno results that we can always reference that I have in the back of my head. And I just know, like, when it's complete nonsense. There was a company a couple years ago that's one of our e-commerce competitors that I won't name, but we watched them switch brands of best exhaust. So they were selling whatever slip-on muffler. I don't want to badmouth that brand either, because it's a good pipe. It's just not right for everyone. It didn't matter whoever called them, no matter what you were doing. If you had an M8 touring model, they sold you the same pipes. Okay, they sold you the exact same mufflers. It didn't matter what you were trying to do. It didn't matter if you wanted a loud pipe. It didn't matter if you wanted a mellow pipe. It didn't matter. Okay, and then all of a sudden, on a dime, they switch to this other pipe. Now, I know that these pipes are totally different from one another, but their line stayed the same. This is the best pipe. And again, what you actually want was not a factor in their recommendation. And so you have to wonder, well, did they just get a deal on 200 sets of these things? Like, did they just buy them in bulk and now they want to get rid of them? And they were also simultaneously saying that they were the best performing pipe and bad mouthing another pipe, which we knew was a very good performing pipe. I'm actually talking about Tabs Zombie slip-ons. People don't think that they perform well, but they actually perform really well where most touring guys want them. And this isn't a commercial for Tab, but they were bad mouthing Tab's performance while selling this other pipe, which actually performed worse. And so this is that kind of recommendation thing where if you just took that at face value and you bought that pipe, you almost definitely didn't get what you wanted, And so for us, as a company that sells every exhaust, we don't really care what brand you're buying for the most part. I mean, if we sell it, we think it's decent quality and we're just going to try to get you into what you want. And so having those things, knowing that, and then knowing what I'm going to tell you next, you don't have to talk to us. You can go to anybody and you could take these things and factor them into your decision. And hopefully you buy the right pipe the first time. That excludes, like, if you change your mind, like we said about changing the style of pipes, there's nothing we could do about that. But this will get you as close to home as humanly possible. And so those are the 5 things not to do. Okay. Now, here are 5 things that you should consider when you're buying a pipe, and these are sort of the traits or the characteristics of pipes. Now, this is going to factor into slip-ons, 2-in-1s, two full systems, however you want to figure out. It doesn't matter. What you're going to do, though, with these 5 things is sort of, you could write them down if you want, or you could just put it in the back of your head and figure out, okay, which one of these things is the most important to me, and you can order them, and then you can pick your pipe based on that. Okay. And this is something that we've recommended to people as a tool to pick the right pipes for years. I mean, I don't even remember when we started doing this, but it's been a really long time. Okay. So you basically have 5 characteristics for exhaust pipes. Okay. You've got price, quality, sound, performance, and appearance. Okay. If you just boil everything down, that's what you've got. And that's where you can define the differences between exhausts. Okay. And so price, how much is price your most important factor? Okay. Put it at the top of the list. Don't ignore the other 4 because that's how you screw up. That goes back to number 3, right? So that's a factor. Quality. Quality is a factor. You know, there's a lot of brands out there that are really good quality that we have really good success with. And there's a handful of brands that, you know, if you have a problem, you're on your own. I'm not going to tell you what those brands are in a video, but, you know, there's a couple. And most of them I don't carry. There are some that I carry because if I don't, somebody else is going to sell them to you. And we don't have like 100% issues. It's just that when we do have an issue, they're a little bit more problematic than some other brands. So quality is a factor. Is quality your number 1 factor? Maybe if you had a problem in the past and you had a really bad experience, maybe you just want a really solid, really good quality pipe. So that's up to you. Number 3, performance. You know, obviously we're talking about a lot of guys with Harley baggers here, but everything that we're talking about applies to every kind of motorcycle. Okay. So is performance your number 1 factor? That's something that you need to decide. I can't tell you that. If it is your number 1 factor, it's immediately going to eliminate a whole set of exhausts. Like right now, if you've got a Harley touring model or a Softail or any kind of V-twin and you want performance, you're going 2 into 1. Okay. So that's going to wipe out all your dual systems, all your even crossover systems and slip-on combinations. And that's going to do that. But maybe performance is somewhere in the middle for you. So maybe you'd like to get a little extra bump, right? But the most important thing is sound, and you want to keep the appearance of the thing. And that's what's next, right? So the other factor is sound. What you think sounds good and what I think sounds good may or may not be the exact same thing, right? And that's up to you to decide. And that's probably the hardest of these things for you to figure out, because you're going to go on YouTube, Instagram, you know, the socials, and try to do your best job. And you watch all these guys doing all these different videos, which is why ours are really consistent. So like, I'm not just plugging ourselves here, but like, if you want to see the most consistent videos where they're all done outside, they're all done on the same bike, and what you want to hear is the difference between different sets of exhaust, I think we do a really good job at that. Okay. For those specific reasons. Cause you know, you'll go out and you'll watch these guys put their slip-ons on their bike for the first time, and they're in their shed or they're in a garage or they're like in their storage unit in between buildings. And so the sound's reverberating around. And so you don't want that if you can avoid it. Right. But what sounds good to you is not something somebody else can decide. Maybe you just want the loudest slip-on you can put on your bike. I mean, we can handle that, and that could be your number 1 factor. And then we can kind of check these other 4 characteristics against that and make sure you're not buying something that's junk, that's going to perform really bad, et cetera, et cetera. So that's sound. And then the last one is appearance, right? And so if we're just talking about slip-ons, again, like we said before, they don't really look different. But if you're talking about side dump 2 into 1s, well, they start to look different. And so again, we don't want to pick just on appearance alone, but as a factor, when we put those other 4 characteristics in place and we value what's the most important to us, maybe appearance is your number 1, but you also don't want to lose. Maybe appearance, I should say it like this, maybe appearance is your number 1, but performance isn't your number 5, right? Performance is your number 2. So you've got to look at that and say, okay, this pipe looks awesome, but is it going to grenade my performance, right? And so that's up to you to figure out. All of these things are things you can take, you can write down, put a note in your phone, just think about it in your head when you're looking at these exhausts, and just use that as a map to try to buy the right pipe the first time. That's what this is all about, right? Again, if you want to buy 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 sets of pipes, that's perfectly fine with me. I sell them all, but I'd rather you not do that. I'd rather you buy 4 or 5 sets of pipes from me because you bought a new bike every time, and you know that you're going to come back and buy the right pipe from us or whatever. But again, you can also just take this and you can go to somebody else and use this as a sort of roadmap to pick your pipes. Maybe it's a brand we don't carry that you end up finding works best for you or whatever. So that's a huge thing that we deal with on a day-to-day basis that we wanted to cover. So that's that part of that. And then we are going to do the first poll here as we get into our sort of bike building segment that we're going to do with you guys, our user-generated bike build. And so the thing that we need you to figure out, and this is going to be on X, Twitter, whatever, we're going to try to figure out, we need to know what direction the whole bike is going to go in. So this is why this is our first poll. So are we going to do a big wheel type custom bagger, which would be, you know, bigger front wheel, something kind of flashy, stretch saddlebags, stretch side covers, that whole way? Are we going to go with the performance bagger, which has taken off in the last couple of years, which is, you know, not so flashy? We go with maybe a 19-inch carbon fiber wheel, et cetera, more performance driven exhaust, performance driven seats, stuff like that? Or are we going to go with something completely different? And maybe we could just do sort of, you know, like there's no real name for this, but just sort of like basic custom plus. So the options are going to be big wheel, performance bagger, and something else. And if you guys pick something else, then I'll just sort of lead us down a path, which is maybe the most common way guys are going to customize their bagger, which might be a wheel. But maybe we're doing like a 21 and some minorly stretch bags, not super stretch bags like the Bad Dad kits or something like that. Maybe we go with just a regular 4.5 inch extension, which we have on the bike. So that's what something else would be. So big wheel, performance bagger, or something else. Get on the Twitter, get on X, let us know. Links are in this video. We will run this till next Tuesday morning, and then we will know what direction we're going in. So appreciate your time, guys. Thank you for watching. As always, if you have any other questions or anything, just feel free to reach out, and have yourselves a great day. We'll talk to you next time.